Breathe, everyone. Breathe. Because it's a new year.
2026, here we come.
We made it, kind of. No, in all seriousness, 2025 was not the year that we expected.
No.
I think. I went back and looked at our January video from last year, and I was wrong on a number of things. And so let's talk about that. What ended up happening in 2025?
I think you had a lot of company about your predictions for 2025.
My wrongness?
Yeah. Yes.
Remind me, what were your predictions for 2025?
I suspected that we were going to see enough inventory that we'd see pricing come down. And that the challenges in the overall market would start to slow down transactions. And basically pricing has been flat. And what I mean by that is, like, we haven't seen a decrease in value. We just haven't gone up either. And transactions actually remained really strong. And so, I was wrong. You were right. David, you were right.
I think we saw a modest increase in the number of transactions. I think market-wide in Santa Fe County, I think we had an increase of about 5% in the transaction count. And I think we had pockets where we have seen evidence of real price declines, and other pockets that have been stronger and more steady, and then a few of those properties that have continued to go up modestly in prices.
And I think we've started to see more competitive situations too.
Mm-hmm.
More multiple offer situations, not like it was during COVID, but 2 or 3 offers coming in.
And this is a very recent occurrence, right?
Within the past quarter, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gabs, and thinking about things like terminations back on market, am I wrong in assuming that it feels like people are having to work together and try to get these to the closing table?
Don't worry, you're not wrong.
Oh, yes.
About that.
Yes, I got one.
No, looking at some of the data, we're fairly consistent when it comes to a termination rate, except in the fourth quarter of last year. We saw about a 10% decline, which tells me that people are playing nice in the sandbox together.
Yeah.
Maybe they just were feeling the holiday spirit. I don't know. But that was a pretty significant drop from what we typically see. So that could be a good sign.
I wonder, do you have any sense whether that's because sellers perhaps were lowering their expectations, or maybe it was on the other side where buyers were feeling like, I don't want to terminate and I need to get this property, and they're removing some of their objections?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both of those things, because right now, nobody really has the upper hand on the other. It's not a seller's market. It's not a buyer's market.
Yeah.
It's just, people are really trying to work together to get deals done. Sellers know that they're being, squeezed a little bit more, and they have to kind of work with some of these objections that they're getting from buyers. And buyers are willing to wait a little bit longer to get some things done during, say, like inspection objections.
Well, and there's more options on the market right now.
Sure.
I mean, I think year over year we're up about 20% on inventory. So, it
helps.
That helps. Yeah, that helps quite a bit, having a choice, right? And so you don't feel like this is the only one that's going to be available. If I'm patient, there might be a better option.
There was a time when there was real fear with low inventory that buyers were forced into making a decision about buying something that they really weren't satisfied and happy with, because they were concerned that they wouldn't have any other good options. So now with the increase in inventory of 20%, even if they don't find that property today, it appears as if there's enough volume of new inventory hitting the market that it is giving the buyers a little more time.
Yeah.
And I think sellers are more realistic about their pricing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are listening to the market and listening to what the buyers are telling them.
I was looking at an interesting statistic about that, which showed me that literally in the last 6 months, we have regularly had more price reductions on a monthly basis than we've had in the way of new listings.
Interesting.
So I think sellers are figuring that out, but perhaps not coming out of the gate.
Do you think that, and this is, because I don't really know one way or the other, you guys are much closer to, some of these transactions than I am. Do you feel like sellers are doing a better job of preparing the property before it hits the market. Could that be a contributing factor?
I think that's very true. And I think that really stems from brokers really understanding the market dynamics today. And in my conversations with our brokers, we're getting a lot stronger recommendations about what to do to prepare the house so that it really hits the market in tip-top condition, and there are fewer objections and issues to deal with through the negotiation process.
And I think we're seeing sellers who are more receptive to the idea of doing pre-listing inspections along those lines.
Always smart.
Yeah.
Always smart. It's better not to have surprises for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you've done some deals recently,
Yeah.
right? So you've been in the trenches. Are we seeing more concessions, like getting to the closing table? Are we seeing more concessions overall?
I personally have seen more concessions, and yes, I'm hearing about more concessions that people are making. And it's interesting because it's both just a financial concession, reduce the price or a credit towards closing costs,
Sure.
and sellers more willing to make repairs on the big ticket items.
Interesting.
I'm going to
So-
second that because I do see a lot of, the objections that go through for transactions, and I'm seeing that a lot more.
Yeah.
People working together during those inspection periods to find a resolution.
Yeah.
Do we think interest rates are having an impact on increased transactions? Because we're about 3/4 of a point below where we were last year. I think we're at about 6% now, and last year I think we were about 6.75.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Laura. I don't think it's having a big effect.
I don't think so. I think the Fed, they just cut rates again yesterday, but I don't think that the Fed cutting rates is necessarily impacting the mortgage rates.
Right.
Because we have, the other countries not buying our T-bills because they don't trust our economy. But I also don't think, I don't think that's a significant enough decrease in interest rates to really have an impact on the market.
I would say, like in that midpoint of the market, let's say 6 to 900,000, that sort of area. I think the price sensitivity is a lot more on the condition of the home than interest rates.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a determining factor than anything else, and that's why I think, if you're a potential seller out there listening to this, it's important to get ahead of those things. Do it on your terms versus in a contract situation where there's a deadline, right? So if the roof does need repairs or these things need to happen, just do it now, right? Before it goes on the market, just get it done. Keep the receipts. Have a licensed professional do it, right? Because there's just still not a lot of willingness on a buyer's side to go into a project right now, which honestly has kind of been the truth for a number of years.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as long as building and remodel costs are still so high, I just don't think we're going to see that change.
I do think there's one change, which is that there is broader acceptance within the market that interest rates are now at a stage where we're not going to expect any significant decreases.
Yeah.
There was a long time when a lot of buyers were, I'm going to wait because I'm going to wait for interest rates to drop back down into the 3 to 4% range. And I don't think we have any expectation of that any longer.
Yeah. No.
Listen, if interest rates are down to 3 or 4%, we have much bigger issues to worry about. I'm serious, right? If you're waiting for that to happen, there's other issues that we're going to be up against. So, we've talked about it. It's hard. Basically, it's impossible to time the market, and so it's a question of like where you're at in your life and what are your motivations, what do you need to do. So, I think, and this is the weird statement maybe in this, is it feels like things are normalizing. I know outside of real estate, things are far from it, right? But I just mean within even our local market, the fact that prices haven't gone down despite a 20% inventory increase and our transactions are up, that tells me that we're finally meeting demand, right? We're finally meeting demand with inventory. There's still buyers out there. That's how come the transactions have gone up. And so in some sense, looking at these numbers, I'm thinking to myself, like, is it back to normal? Like, it kind of feels that way.
Yeah. And what is normal?
What is
Yeah.
normal? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But there's some stability that has come back, and Santa Fe has not fallen off the sort of national psyche as a destination and as a place that people want to be, and for good reason. And so as long as that's there, I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah. What Gab said earlier, it's neither a buyer's market nor it's a seller's
very
market.
balanced.
It's very balanced right now. And if that's the definition of normal, then there we are.
Yeah.
And our stability shows strength when a lot of the outline markets, our feeder markets, are starting to suffer from inventory issues and declining prices.
Yes.
We haven't seen that as happening.
No, we haven't. And I think about the building that's been going on around town. You can't miss it, right? There's a lot of projects coming live, and with that inventory increasing and that demand still being out there, Santa Fe is growing. Like, let's just call it what it is, right?
Yep.
Santa Fe is growing, and there's pros and cons to that, as we all know. So I think some of those other markets, you're seeing the opposite. You're starting to see some of those that grew a lot during the COVID years starting to shrink a little bit. The labor markets have changed, so people move, right? And so there's a lot of weird sort of national movement occurring, and then here we're still a place that people want to be. And as long as that's the case, yeah, I think we're in a stable position.
So one of the new things in our marketplace is the city imposed high sales price excise tax, the mansion tax, as
Right.
it was referred to, because that went into effect when the appellate court decision was overturned. That was in late October, and the city if you're buying within the city limits, you're subject to a 3% tax. The city's collecting that now. And that-
On any amount over $1 million.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that has been appealed to the Supreme Court, but who knows when that'll get around to.
So actually, I
Yeah.
want you to clarify that because I think there's been some confusion. So if the house is $1,100,000,
Then the tax is 3% of the 100,000.
right? So thank you, because I think there's been confusion that it's on the total value,
No.
and it's on the value above 1 million.
Above 1 million.
Yeah.
And that, I don't remember the exact numbers, but that is set to scale up. In other words, I think in another year, I don't know what the numbers are, but it will be on any amount over $1,000,001 or $1,000,000 something.
Sure. So it'll match sort of
So,
inflationary
yes.
forces. Got
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, it used to be $1 million as a sales price was thought of as a luxury property. Is that the case in Florida?
Not so much.
I mean, it's still a lot of money.
Yes.
like let's not get away from that. It's a ton of money. But the market here has changed, and so luxury properties are probably north of $1.5 million, $2 million properties, depending on location, of course, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of those sales, a lot. Like that last quarter, there was a lot of high-end sales. However, they took a really strong dip in December, right? And so that comes back to, in those higher price points, it's more discretionary. No one wants to move during the holidays, so you see that drop off. My suspicion is we'll see it come back pretty strong this spring.
Yep.
So speaking of growth, builders, what's going on out there?
Right. Well, you see one group of builders putting up apartment buildings all around town. There's a lot of that going on, which I applaud, because that's going to do a lot, honestly, to lower the cost of housing in Santa Fe. There's going to be a tremendous influx of supply, and that is clearly going to have downward pressure on rental prices, and that does impact the housing market. It provides more options. And then when you look at new construction, I think what we're seeing are a lot of price decreases from a handful of these national builders. Is that an indication of prices dropping within our market, or does that tell a different story?
Well, I think there are different factors involved there. The cost of building materials and the carrying time.
Yeah, I think carrying time's doing a lot of lifting there.
Yeah.
I do. I think capitalization for folks, you got to have money moving through, and
Yeah.
it's tough to carry indefinitely. And because our permitting system is so fast here, that's a joke. These things sometimes take a lot longer than they might in, let's say, Dallas, Fort Worth or something like that.
Right.
So, you got to have deep pockets to build in Santa Fe, and the prices reflect that.
There's certainly been a decline in new construction contracts from what I've seen. We were earlier in the year, we were seeing a lot of those come through, and now it's one here and there. So it's declined a lot.
Interesting.
So I can understand why they'd be reducing some prices since they've stopped moving as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my analysis is that it's not an indication of decreasing values in the market. It's that the builders were suffering from tremendous price increases in materials and labor. And now they had to retrench from that because the market's not substantiating it.
Well, I always ask this question. If you're a buyer, if you're a seller, right? So if you're a buyer right now, what's the general consent? What's the advice going into 2026?
Well, we've got some good inventory. You've got some options. Look around. don't make an offer till you're sure that you want the house. But my standard advice still holds. Once you know you want it, don't hesitate, because there is competition out there.
Absolutely. And it's starting to creep back up now, what
Yeah.
we're seeing. So it's important to take your time, but it's also important to have your ducks in a row so that when that property comes up, you can pull the trigger and move quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice. And I think the other constant is don't hold back on getting good inspections. That is so much more important these days because of the cost of remodeling and retrofitting and changing things. I've seen examples where people were reluctant and decided not to get an inspection because they didn't want to spend another $700. So they decided not to do a sewer scope. Well, do you know what a new sewer line costs when you have to dig up the yard and connect into the main city line in the street? It's really important to be very thorough with inspections.
Yeah, and I think my piece of advice is do your financial homework up front, because it feels like lenders they have a different level of scrutiny at the moment. I've seen a number of transactions get hung up because at the final day it was like, oh, actually we can't do this. And so I think for folks, especially if you're buying right now, take your time, get your ducks in order, as you said. And shop your lenders, really, right? Make sure you got someone that will get it done at the end of the day.
And you know what else? Talk to your insurance brokers too.
Yes, yeah, same thing.
Good point.
That's a tough one. Allow yourself plenty of time
Yep.
to shop for insurance. I have a buyer. We just went under contract. She's been rejected by 8 insurance brokers.
8 insurance brokers.
8
Wow,
insurance brokers.
okay.
She finally found one, but it's
It's tough out there.
yeah.
Oof. Well, yeah, work with a good broker too, like a good real estate broker,
Yeah.
because yeah. Sellers. What should sellers be thinking about right now?
Same as we've been saying. You know, position your house to show well, get the pre-listing inspection, make the big repairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say pay close attention to what's happening in your micro market, right? Because there's all these different pockets throughout Santa Fe. And like David said, some prices have been increasing modestly, others have been reducing slightly, and some are flat. So it's, even though, we're in a fairly small city, we've got these different pockets that seem to get hot and get cold.
Yes.
So you need to pay attention to your own micro market.
That's great advice. You know, north of I-25, north of 599,
Right.
that area is fairly hot. Like it's been, we've seen values increase. We've seen a lot of transactions. You go south of I-25, like New Mexico 14, that sort of zone, not so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great advice. It is a micro market here. It is not just an average.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's important to make sure you're on top of most recent trends, because we're seeing impacts in the market based literally on just what's happened in the last 30 to 45 days.
It's true.
More important to really focus on those transactions and comparables compared to the ones that were 6 months old.
Right. Well, it's January.
What's your prediction for 2026, Kyle?
Yeah, don't take my advice. I'm actually a little bit bullish. There's a lot of noise out there, and I do think last year, we talked about how politics don't usually play into it. Last year might have been an exception to that rule, because we did see a pause for some time, and I think that many folks are, life goes on, right? There's the headlines, and then there's my life, and I think a lot of people are choosing to do what they need for themselves, which is great. That's ultimately what you should be focused on. And so I think with, again, the focus that's been on Santa Fe, we keep being ranked number 1 in just about everything, it seems. I don't anticipate that changing. I think a lot of people are still looking at us. They're still excited about buying or moving here. And we're going to continue to see that go forward. So I'm kind of bullish. I think it's going to be a lot of transactions and strong pricing going into this year. Laura, how about yourself?
I'm with you. I think I'm not as bullish as you are. I think we're going to see a steady market. I think interest rates are not going much of anywhere. And, it's like you said, we're still a destination market. I think people still want to be here. But I don't think it's going to be a rip-roaring good time.
That's not really what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I don't think, I just don't think we're going to see any of those key numbers really decline. I think it's going to be steady and there's going to be strong interest here. And I do think people might find themselves in competitive situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Starting to see that. I
Yeah.
think people have to be on their toes.
Got to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at just how we've started out this month so far and comparing that with last year, the two are kind of mirroring each other right now. So me personally, I'm anticipating a very similar market to what we had in 2025. Could be wrong. I don't know. We've been wrong before, obviously.
Yep.
But just seeing a similar start to the year, I'm curious if that's going to continue.
Sure. David, you're
I'm
always
gonna be-
optimistic.
I'm always optimistic, and I feel like it's going to be a steady year without any kind of significant change. And I look forward to that.
Yeah, that actually kind of sounds nice. I'd be happy to be wrong on all fronts at this
Yes.
point. Yeah, so. Well, all right. We'll put that in the archives. We'll come back to it next year. But for now, let's close out 2025 like that never happened. And we'll get going in 2026. We'll make it a good year.